Uh, it's been a while since they were in the conference, but UMass was a program you're familiar with from their time in the MAC East. What is different, or how they changed in the 2 years since they've been an independent? Just looking at film, what do they like to do, that kind of thing?
Well, I think first of all they're an athletic group. I had a chance to watch them in several games now already, and we'll be continuing to watch them really throughout the beginning of this week to finalize some things. But they have athletes, and I think that's shown. They're never out of a game. The game against Tennessee was a close, hard-fought football game, so they have the potential to step on the field and win. They have a good quarterback. He likes to throw. Their receivers, I think, are very good receivers. They got good routes. I like what their mixture is all about in terms of setting up their offense. Defensively, they play fast, and it's our experience with them a few years ago. It was a hard-fought contest up there. We'll be going now to a new stadium. They've got a lot of things to play for and to battle for, and obviously we'll be going into somewhat of a similar situation in terms, I think, of a football team that has a lot of pride, and they know that they're very close to winning football games. Whereas this last game, we were going against a team that was undefeated, but the same basis in terms of what they're all about. And so, I don't expect to play a game this year where we don't play the teams at their best, and that'll be the case here.
Do you know Mark Whipple? He's been around the block, and he took over after you guys got done playing him. But you guys seem similar in style and approach, and what you try to be about with your teams every year.
Yeah, I know Mark. I don't know him extremely well, but I do know him. And I think he's a no-nonsense coach that does a great job with his players. I think he knows how to get them ready to play week after week, despite what they're going up against or despite where things are at in their season. I think he's a guy that has the ability to really motivate players, and I'm sure we'll have them ready to go.
Thank you, Jason. From a frame of reference standpoint, with the way that UMass played against Tennessee last week, and even though that UMass is winless coming in, does that help based on the fact that you went down to Tennessee last year, guys on this team went down there and had that hard-fought battle and know what it takes to play that well against Tennessee? Does that help in the focus this week against the UMass ball club for you guys?
I would think so. It certainly helps me, and I think our coaches, and we've got bright players. They know what they'll be getting into. That football team at Tennessee when we played them was a good football team, and the same way this year. With those guys, and they played them tooth and nail. And so our guys are smart. They understand what this game is all about, and that you have just got to get ready every week. If you don't, you're going to get beat. And it's as plain and simple as that. Everybody has athletes. You look at the MAC conference. There's not a team in the MAC that doesn't have athletes, and so obviously, those teams are ready to go, and the team that isn't is the team that's going to be left out.
Coach, just a question about red zone offense. 17 for 18, one in the red zone this year. Obviously, an improvement from last year. But is there going to be an emphasis this week at all that maybe not scoring in the red zone, but getting to the red zone? That was something that you guys weren't able to exactly do last week. The only touchdown in regulation came off of that interception.
Yeah, and nobody's been great against Eastern Michigan, getting in the red zone and scoring in the red zone and putting points on the board. They're first in our conference in scoring defense after they had 3 games. Basically everybody else has 4. And so those statistics are getting to a point where they mean something. So it's obvious they've got a very, very good defensive football team. So you've got to take that into consideration when you talk about moving the ball against a team like that, period, whether it's outside the red zone or inside the red zone. You got to look for opportunities. When you get those opportunities, you got to make the most of them. If you don't, then you're going to have problems. You know, we had 2 fumbles, 2 turnovers. Those were costly. They didn't necessarily produce points for them. I think 3 points is what they got out of it. But you know, you do lose field position, and we lost the field position battle with these guys. And usually you don't win a ball game when you lose the field position battle. So there was a lot that went on in this ball game. So you know, I feel comfortable where we're at in terms of our red zone offense and our ability to get into the red zone. But it's going to be different every game. You know, some teams, their strength lies in their defense. Some teams, their strength lies in their offense. Some teams, their strength lies in their kicking game. And so when you match up against a team like Eastern Michigan, you got to find a way to get points on the board, and however you get them on the board is good. You'll take it.
Coach AJ Olette, he had 145 rushing yards last game. I guess what was it like to kind of, I mean, that was his best game of the season, but what was it like seeing him being able to rush for over 100 yards and help the team, help the offense out?
Yeah, he had a great game. You know, he was physical. He made great moves. And before, you know, you even talk about AJ's physicality in terms of what he's about when he goes into contact, he makes great reads at the line of scrimmage. And he finds the right creases that enables him to get to the linebackers and the safeties. And when he does, obviously he's a load to bring down. I don't know that I've seen many running backs that can get as low as he gets going into contact. So you can come in thinking you're going to cut his legs out from under him, but his pad level is right there where you're coming. And so he's able to stay on his feet, has great balance, and get yards after contact. You know, and so you love a back like that. But you also love a back that's able to jump over somebody, jump over a tackler. And then the truly amazing part of that to me was after he came down, he knew exactly what was happening with the next guy coming in, and he came underneath him for an extra couple yards, which most backs would have, after leaping over somebody, would have taken that hit and would have gone down there. He got the first. And so, you know, he's special in a lot of ways. His leadership shows every practice. I mean, it shows every practice as well as in the games, obviously. And tremendous energy all the time, encouraging his teammates. I think the line loves to block for him. So he's got a lot going for himself, and he's got a lot going for us. And, you know, he's come off a year which was difficult for him, difficult for us, difficult to come off of that year and play at the level that he's playing now, but he's been able to accomplish that.
Did the hurdle surprise you?
You know, I saw it coming.
Did you?
Yeah, you probably saw it coming too,
well,
right?
we saw it up there as it was happening, but
no, actually, you know, I felt that maybe is what he was going to do, and I didn't know if he was going to be able to get it done, you know, but he did.
Did you ever hurdle?
No, I doubt that very much. But it was a very athletic move by him, and then what he got done after the hurdle was athletic too. So.
Coach, obviously Brad Ellis had the big pick six, but what have you seen from him through the first 4 games that stood out to you so far?
Yeah, you know, he's an experienced guy for us on defense, and you know, that's got to show in a lot of ways. And I think he takes his role on very seriously as in terms of an experienced guy, experienced player for us, and a leader for us on the football team. He's a great guy. He's a bright player. And so he not only uses his athletic ability, but he's a smart football player. And so it's not unusual for him to come up with, you know, special plays. Some of it because of athleticism, some of it because he's just a smart football player.
And you mentioned after the EMU game on Saturday that the DBs and specifically the corners were under a lot of pressure, and they played well under that. Did the film kind of back that up for you?
Yeah, it sure did. Was not an easy game for them, and played in the last year. And that game was tough on them last year. But I thought they responded great, and was real pleased with what they were able to get done. And if they, you look at those guys, not only did they break up passes, but they made tackles. Jalen Fox was our leading tackler, So obviously, if they break down, you'd have a tough time beating that team.
Coach, also after the game, you mentioned like how deep your wide receiving depth chart is this season. I guess specifically, what is it like been seeing, Cam Odom come in and make plays? He makes the overtime catch and the double OT to, kind of help you win you guys the game.
Yeah.
What has it been like seeing like him and the other young guys kind of step up?
Yeah, it's great seeing those guys play at the level that they're capable of playing at, and some of them are somewhat young to where, if you don't have a lot of confidence in yourself, you're probably, even if you have the ability, you're not going to be able to make some of those plays. And so it's great to see them step up and make the plays. Elijah went down. Elijah was having a great fall camp and ready to go and be a big contributor to us this year. So obviously that was a blow. Poppy goes down, but then you just start looking at what those guys, the guys that were able to play, accomplished in this game for us, and I think they all stepped up and did a good job.
You talked about the EMU defense and how strong they can be, but with that last possession of regulation that you guys had, I think there was maybe 55 seconds left, a couple timeouts. What sort of went into the decision to not push the field a little bit?
In regulation play? It's you can push it, but one mistake and the game is in their hands with under 55 seconds to go. And if we did run the ball. It wasn't a deal where we just took a knee and we tried a few things. We tried to fake take a knee and a couple other things to see if we couldn't get a little bit better field position to try to get in field goal range. But what we didn't want to do, obviously, was have to punt, because you never know on a punt. Our guy Michael gets it off quick and he's got great hands, but you don't want that ball in the air necessarily at that point in time in the game. So you're going to run it, and so we were handing it off, trying to get obviously first downs, but making sure that we also found a way to make them use their timeout, and so their final timeout if we could, and so I thought that was managed really very well, and there was a lot of conversation going on from the guys up in the booth and myself, and that's the route we went.
How much did the end of the first half affect or color the decision making at the end of regulation? You guys were the beneficiaries of someone trying to push it at the end of the half. Did that come up during your discussions in that period?
No, it really didn't. But those things set in your mind when they happen, and our staff has a lot of experience. So we've been through other situations similar to this over the course of our careers, and they kind of register to you in terms of when you maybe should take a chance, when you probably don't want to take a chance. We've been really good down in the red zone. I like what the plays that we're able to get to in the red zone. So basically, you're talking about overtime, and so we thought our chances were good if we could get this into overtime.
Is there anything new on some of the guys, Poppy White, Terrell, Sam McKnight?
No, it's pretty much the same with those guys for this week. Yep.
Coach, Dorian Brandon playing the second half. Is there any injury there, or was it just because AJ was doing such a good job running the ball?
Yeah, AJ basically was the guy that we were going to keep going with for the most part, and we did give Julian a couple reps, but came right back to AJ. And it's not that we don't feel comfortable with Dorian in there. That's really not it.
Right.
You know, Dorian did a lot for us last season, man. He kept pounding, and he has breakaway speed, and so he's a back that you truly trust in those situations in the second half. But AJ just seemed to be going at a level that we just stayed with him.
Okay. And this might be looking into it too much, but this is the first week of the year that you guys are going to have to go on a plane to travel somewhere, longer travel. Does that factor in at all to maybe resting guys this week? I don't know if going on an airplane factors into that.
Yeah. Not necessarily. You know, it's probably, it can be draining, you know, going on an airport and getting through security and all those things that you think always go quickly or smoothly, or, you know, and the buses are there when you land, which aren't always the case sometimes. So, you know, there's things that can pop up, but you know, would I rather fly than bus for 6, 7, 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever? Yeah, and I think our players feel the same way too, you know. And you know, this bus trip this time wasn't bad. You know, 4 hours, 15 minutes, 4 hours and a half maybe. We took a break halfway. So it wasn't bad, and it can give you a chance to relax, as long as you're not getting back at 5:36 in the morning on the bus. You know, that's where the tough part comes in. But again, playing on the road and having it be a distance like it is, I don't think that'll factor in. What'll factor in is, you know, what our guys are, how they are right now. That was a physical football game, and you know, we'll find out from John in terms of how he and Dak feel like these guys can be pushed a little bit this week. But they've responded every week to us, and you know, you want to make sure you're giving them the right breaks. And you know, I've said this many times, it's the head coach's responsibility for the teams to go in with fresh legs and good shoulders, and that's because if your team does, they have a shot, especially if your team plays like ours does. And so we're obviously, you know, going to try to get them fresh as we possibly can for this game, whatever that means in adjusting the schedule.
I just got one last question. Blair Brown and Terrell Basham both recorded their first career tackles in the NFL this past weekend.
How neat is that? Yeah.
Yeah. How neat is that? How great is that for the program? And
Yeah.
how nice is it to see that you have two guys come out here as rookies and are making impacts?
You know, that's great. You know, kept in touch with both of them a little bit while they were in camp, and they seemed to think things were going well. But you know, in pro ball, you never know. You know, obviously week by week, you got to keep pressing and hope that you stay with the club. Those guys have talent, and I know in the long run it will play out for them. Glad to see that they're getting playing time right now. That's nothing but a good sign for them, and it's great for our program to have them representing Ohio University.
Sticking kind of with the NFL, I'm assuming you heard about kind of what happened this weekend and yesterday. Do you have any comment on either what the president had to say or the NFL players' reaction at all?
No, really no comment.
Moving back to UMass just a little bit, they got a pretty good tight end. Some say he's the best in the country. He's been injured, may or may not play. But beside that, what is the benefit to an offense to having a pass-catching threat at that position? What does it do to a defense knowing that can be a factor?
Yeah, it's a huge factor because it really gives you the extra big guy blocker that at times you need in there, you know. And a lot of teams go to 11 personnel where you have one tight end in the game. Some teams will go to 2. We go to 2 sometimes, you know. And so the value of the tight end is extreme. And they're hard guys to find. They're hard guys to find in terms of having the size and strength that you need to knock people around at the line of scrimmage. And then, you know, you're not only going to ask them to run over routes or underneath routes. You know, at times you'll want them to go deep, and they need to have enough speed to make that a viable option in your game. Those deep routes with them, they got to be a viable receiver. And And so when you have a guy like that, it's a big threat to opposing teams. He's a multi-dimensional player, a really good tight end.
What kinds of things do you do to try to minimize that impact then if you're defending against one of those guys?
Well, it's hard, because they'll move the tight end around. You'll not only be on the line of scrimmage. Most teams, some will have him off where he can motion. Others will split him out where he becomes a big target out there. Even if you're just running hitches or slants, he's a big body you're throwing at, and he just gets his body in between the defender and the ball. So it's difficult. You just got to be aware of the great tight ends. You got to know their favorite routes. You got to know when the quarterbacks go to them, and then you just got to wish for the best.
UMass also had its starting quarterback knocked out of the game last week at Tennessee. How much do you know about the backup? Does it matter to them which guy is in the ball game? Will you prepare differently if you know one guy is going to play or not play?
Well, obviously the starter is really a good thrower. The backup player, from what I've seen and what we've been able to get information on, he's definitely a threat as a runner as well as a player, and so they may run a little bit more with him, or he may decide to take off and run a little bit more. So, regardless whether you're throwing a guy that's really a good thrower, a pocket thrower, or whether you're facing a guy that can run and throw, if the team has the right guy at that position, it's going to cause you problems.